Welcome to another current event update. My name is Marco, pastor of Community Church of Devore in Southern California. I wanted to address a certain trend that we're seeing in our world, not just in the United States, not just in Europe, not just in Australia, but globally. And that is, are we heading to a cashless society? Is there a war on cash? It certainly seems to be that way. During the lockdown years, 2023, 2022, 2021, down to 2020, the world went into really a change of dynamics globally. Not only work, not only family life, not only church life. As Christians, obviously work environments, behavior, the way people bought things, the way the government did it, dealt with the citizens, technology. And you could say a lot things change and they've never gone back to the way things were. And in fact, we used to have a saying, I don't think we're going back to normal anymore. And we didn't even know what normal means anymore. Well, one of the things I saw that was really interesting was the use of cash was greatly reduced. In fact, if you went to the store, they will discourage you from using cash because the media and the way here in America, the CDC, the Central Disease Control, made it out to be that cash was actually the carrier of the disease. It was dirty, it was contaminated, and you were better off using your credit card, and people didn't want to go into the store anymore. So the only way to pay was mobile pay or online, and we went very quickly to a near cashless society. Very quickly. And in a very short time, contactless payments, as they were called, became the norm. And it wasn't even just inserting your credit card anymore. You literally had to just tap the payment system. You don't have to use your credit card anymore. It was just simply hover over it or tap it, as it had the microchips. So we've seen this war on cash for some time. It's nothing new, but the way it's advancing, it is the most concerning part. It is no longer a conspiracy, but actually a confluence of very powerful groups that are involved in this, and they have their own interests and they have their own agenda. And I'm not saying it's a conspiracy because they've been pretty much, these groups have been pretty much open about how and why they want to do this. And they want to take an advantage of getting rid of cash, or at least severely restrict it. Now, one of the major players in this is financial tech companies. So they call them fintech companies. And this will be credit card companies, payment processing companies like PayPal, like Venmo. Here in the United States, it's a pretty big. Stripe, it's a pretty big one. Square is a pretty big one. And they have a lot of incentives because they have a lot to gain, a huge revenue. If you think about credit card companies, they use 1 to 3, they usually gain 1 to 3% on every transaction. Remember the rate of inflation, as things price higher now and they cost more, that small percentage, 2, 3, whatever it may be, sometimes 1%, it's part of a bigger number. So companies like PayPal and Venmo are now being used as credit card companies through their mobile apps. People pay with their phone or their smartwatch now, and they usually use payment systems like PayPal or like Venmo. Companies like Apple, which is a technology company making laptops and computers and iPhones, have gone into this industry through Apple Pay. Google has Google Pay or Google Wallet, and Amazon has Amazon Pay. They're all bidding for this choice of cashless, more convenient payment system. Credit card companies, as we talked about earlier, have a lot to gain. They charge interest. Huge amount of interest. In fact, in the mid-2000s, we used to think it was high, and 13%, 14%, 15%. Now it's in the 20s and the high 20%. And their revenue the last 10 years have gone from $6 billion to $16 billion. So it seems to be the higher the interest, the more revenue they make. So they, of course, like contactless payments. They like credit card payments, mobile payments. Then, of course, they know a lot about you. They have all the data regarding what you buy and when you buy it and how much you buy. And this is, of course, a big part of what they do is they sell that data to data brokers. They're also a big part of gaming systems. In fact, this is one of their leading industries that they could control and they could affect the way people play video games online. In fact, they process a number of payments for Steam, which is a large platform for games. And if they don't like a game, they simply stop taking payments for that game. With no laws passed by Congress or no laws passed by legislation, they simply pass these laws through their executives. So not to get into the Second Amendment issue here in the United States, but the conversation about firearms is really interesting because firearm companies have actually been affected by credit card companies because they threaten them to shut them down all the time. These are legal businesses. And remember, PayPal had tried to go after people in what they were posting online, saying that if you post misinformation, they can remove your PayPal account. Now, the second group are big businesses. We call them major businesses. Here in America, big companies would have been something like sports teams. Sports teams are pretty big, and because of entertainment. The National Football League was one of the first ones to go after cash, in the sense of they went hard after contactless payment. In fact, most teams, I think there's only one team that doesn't have a cashless stadium. There's most NFL teams have what they call cashless stadium. I think there's only one. Modernizing it and increasing the revenue. Baseball has gotten into it. Basketball, hockey. In Europe, you have football teams, football clubs that are their stadiums are completely cashless. Cashless concerts are a norm now. And so not only the payment processors, but these entertainment companies, these big businesses, they believe they can have lower overhead. And I used to work in the business world, and this is true. Cash takes time to count. You need another person to do it. It's not a big deal, but as you're reducing labor, you don't want to carry extra staff. You don't want to carry extra work. You don't want to carry more processing time. So this is why they want to get rid of cash. Also, they study a lot of consumer behavior, and consumer psychologists believe that, and they publish reports all the time, that people spend more money when they don't use cash. So meaning when they use basically mobile apps or credit cards, they tend to use more money. In fact, the Federal Reserve in Boston published a report, I believe it was 2015 or 2016, in which they stated that people are twice as likely to spend more money if they pay with credit cards. I sometimes take my kids to a baseball game, local minor league baseball team stadium that is near my house. It seems to be much more affordable, and it's more local than the professionals, more of the professional teams. And no matter how expensive things are, people tend to spend money. I mean, I'm shocked at the price of a bottle of water or some food, and people just seem to spend it. And it's not a big deal because, remember, at the end of the day, they're just numbers on a piece of paper when you get your receipt. Other studies have warned people, and this is an interesting thing, that they have warned people that when you use credit cards, not only do you tend to spend more, but there's a greater chance of overspending, meaning that you go beyond your budget, which is one of the reasons that people have problems in their budgets every month, is because the payments due at the end of the month, no matter what. And so people have a hard time making ends meet. So businesses love it because people overspend, and they see a benefit because, they don't care if you have a hard time paying your bill. They're not going to pay it for you. If you're late, the credit card companies love it because they just charge you late fee, because credit card companies love the interest, they love the extra charges, and other businesses like sports teams love it because people overspend. They don't have a problem buying a $9 bottle of water. No wonder they're trying to restrict cash or get rid of cash, and they're one of the biggest cheerleaders of that. Here in the United States, you see people today financing groceries. You see people today doing pay later loans, and even dividing up the payments for the grocery bill into 4 installments. So they'll buy it and they will make payments on actual groceries, which is something new that's been going on in our society. So this is why you see credit card companies, big businesses like sports teams using this or trying to restrict cash. And this is why you see people going into debt, and the debt bomb has exploded here in America over the last 20 years, and this is why financial companies love the restriction on cash. And of course, government would love to see a restriction on cash, at least maybe restrict it, maybe get rid of it. And this is also very interesting because one of the ways governments to increase tax revenue, they want to stamp out cash. In fact, they feel that to increase tax revenue, one of the ways to increase it was to get rid of cash. Of course, people won't be able to pay for things through cash, so people will be forced to pay it through credit cards or mobile apps, and then there'll be better tracking, and then the taxes will be charged on top of that. Remember, black economies, that's what they call black economies, underground economies, which exist everywhere, keeps lots of tax revenues away from government because people just spend it on things. There's no transaction fees, there's no taxes on it. And by the way, governments love that tax revenue because they love to spend billions and millions of dollars in all kinds of projects and things that people don't even want. But one of the things government is tied to is intelligence agencies and law enforcement agencies. They have a great desire to know what you're doing with your money. Not only what you do with your money, but your phone calls, your text messages, your emails. And of course, the administration that was largely here in America guilty of this was the Obama administration. Barack Obama, we saw the expansion of collecting data, especially by intelligence agencies. Now, there was an act in 1970, the government passed an act that it was literally what's called the Bank Secrecy Act, which is basically you could no longer keep anything secret, and the bank had to report it to the government if you spent in a day any transaction in cash over $10,000. Now, back in 1970, that was a lot of money, so people didn't usually use $10,000. Now, a car is $40,000. I mean, it's quite amazing what $10,000 is today. It doesn't go very far, and but the law is still there that if anyone has a transaction over $10,000 in cash, above $10,000, has to be reported. In fact, this current administration actually wanted to make it around $200 in certain towns and cities near Southern California and the border towns in Mexico, border towns in Texas with Mexico, because of the cartel, and they will be able to basically be able to track drug lords and cartels. And of course, this is a way to fight that. But it didn't go through because there was a court case, and the Institute of Justice delayed it. At least for now, they delayed it in certain cases. So we'll see how that goes if they even lower the threshold of the $10,000 of cash in a day that has to be reported. Now, remember, there was a lot of financial information that came out at the end of 2024 in which the government literally published it, that the way to know people is to know their spending habits. You can know their religion, you can know their political affiliations, you can know what they buy, you can know what they like. And so that private information was made known to intelligence agencies, to governments, and they even consider those who express opinions like the Second Amendment, or they didn't like the government, or open borders, or they questioned the mystery disease. They even consider some of those people terrorists. If you bought a Bible, if you bought firearms, if you bought something, the credit card company can know, the financial companies would know, the governments would know. And bottom line, governments are very interested in tracking every dollar that you spent. And remember, there's a way to control them. I mean, may I remind you of what happened in Canada in 2022? Justin Trudeau passed an emergency act in which he froze the bank accounts of anyone directly involved or indirectly involved with the Canadian Freedom Convoy that were protesting against the lockdowns and the draconian measures that the Canadian government took against its own people. Now, that was one thing what the government did, but the banks and the financial institutions, you know what they did? They went along with it. They didn't even question it, the legality. They didn't even challenge the legality. They just simply rubber stamped whatever the government wanted. And so the problem is if people use cash, they're harder to control. Governments know that. If people use cash, they limit what they spend. If people use cash, they don't spend as much. and they can choose where, how much to spend, because it only goes so far. And so financial companies and businesses don't like that, because they want people to overspend and spend more money. So it's an unholy unity there, or I guess triunity there, of government and businesses and, of course, financial companies. It's all about money. It's all about control. It's really all about gathering information for their own good. Many times they say for their own good. So we're doing this for our own good, for the citizens' good, which I don't buy that for a moment. Now, there are some bills here in the United States that are seemingly trying to help people keep the cash or use cash. I'm talking about HR 1138 and S2336, and this is a good urgent, maybe a good call for American citizens to call your local congressman and tell them to support these two bills, which would give freedom to people to use cash, and not businesses can't discriminate against those who are using cash, and they won't be able to be charged more if people buy or purchase with cash. So I think it's really good to call your local congressman, find out who it is. If you don't know who it is, you can do a quick search online and call them and let them know to back it or support it personally. Now, where is this going in the short term? I think we're going to lose more and more freedoms, of course. I believe that's what governments are doing. People are protesting. We'll see if the populist movements continue in Europe, continue here in America. I think a lot of these financial tech companies are going to dictate what people buy and how they buy it, and governments will have more and more control and track what people buy through these financial institutions. Remember, the next step is biometrics. In fact, it's being used already, using chip technology to facilitate payment. It's already on your credit card, but years ago, a trend began of people using this chip technology and embedding it inside the bodies, just underneath the skin, to pay for things like vending machines, or to unlock offices, or turn on the computers, or getting to buildings. Now, it was a trend, but it didn't leave, because there are still people who are doing that. Now remember, Amazon's latest payment terminal no longer requires a credit card. It's just basically you register your hand, tie it to your financial company or financial information. Your hand is connected to your account, and you just wave your hand over the sensor, and voila, you paid for things.
We're in China, and this is how advanced cashless payment is in this country. Right, so now I'm going to pay for it. I've left my phone and my card at home. I've actually got nothing. Can't pay.
And with the advancement of and popularity of digital currency, and the current administration advancing the use of digital stable coins through the Genius Act, what they call the Clarity Act. Remember, governments all around the world would love to issue a central bank digital currency, CBDC, digital. Here in the United States, it's not so much advancing here as it is in Europe. Europe is wanting to put it into action by the fall of this year. So just in a few months, we'll see what happens, right? Here in the United States, it seems more private companies are doing it. Companies like Circle are going to be the ones issuing these stable coins. It's still a digital coin. It's just not directly tied to the government. It's indirectly tied to the government. More, sort of like how privacy went away with some of these private companies like Facebook and Google. The government didn't have to do it. The private companies did it, and they tied it back to the government. So remember, these governments love to crack down on free speech. They love to censor people, and they use these tools like artificial intelligence more and more to censorship. And technology becomes a weapon now. So the advancements of AI, it's getting easier and easier for governments to do that. Obviously, the issuance of digital IDs are the next step. And of course, the usage of the internet tied to basically digital IDs. And they're even incentivizing people, like in Australia and in Europe, in one case in Austria, if you tie your financial information to a digital ID, they're able to give you, I think it's 100 euros, sort of like a reimbursement for just being a citizen. We'll just load up your digital ID, your digital wallet. If you have a digital ID, we'll give you 100 euros. It's sort of a way of incentivizing it, and how expensive things are, and people are struggling financially. 100 euros seems to be an incentive. Now remember, what we're talking about here has largely already been done and implemented in China. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has implemented this for quite a few years now. Earlier than 2016, 2015, the CCP implemented a social credit score, which has led to the blacklisting of thousands of people. They're unable to travel, they're unable to own a home, they're unable to work, they're unable to have a bank account. And because they are unable to have a bank account, because everybody gets paid digitally, at least most people do, they're not able to work, and so they're not able to find any kind of job. So a lot of them are homeless.
后来我才明白，一代人有一代人的牢笼。父亲的牢笼叫故土，而我的牢笼是他乡。一个走不出去，一个无法回来。故乡的土地困住了他，远方生活锁住了我。我们名为选择。
This is the future of the West, I believe, unless there's a quick turning away from it. But unfortunately, governments like Canada and Australia and the UK, and especially in the European Union, countries like Austria within the European Union are going down the road of implementing not just digital currency, not just digital IDs, but a soft version, at least at the beginning, of a social credit score. Europe has lots of financial problems. Runaway inflation, open borders. They're trying to go carbon neutral as they just made the energy crisis even worse and very, very expensive, which then has affected their industry, so they're not able to compete in the labor market. It's very expensive, and they can't compete in the international market. And of course, they have an unsustainable social welfare. There's literally problems with migrants coming into Europe. And they have a war in their own backyard, which is Ukraine and Russia. And of course, now they committed to about 4 to 5% of their GDP into NATO, which I don't even know how they're going to do that if they're struggling financially. So Australia, it's in the same way. Less and less banks are carrying cash. ATMs are disappearing. I was there a few years back, and it was hard. Some banks were just taking out ATMs. You have to go and maybe drive far away to find one. Mobile wallets are taking the place of ATM cash withdrawals. They're very popular in Australia. And the rise of censorship by the government demanding its citizens to have digital IDs. This is, of course, very concerning for countries like Australia. By the way, Israel, it's very advanced in how they deal with technology and payment systems. And every transactions, they're very advanced in everyday transactions, paying taxes, fines, utility. It's very much digital. However, there is a black economy. I've been there, and it's actually quite large of the black economy, the underground economy, the cash economy. And the government is keen on restricting that use of cash. At least for the moment, people can use it. But more and more you see the war on cash. Of course, I do believe as a Christian, we're heading toward Revelation 13, where you will need a permission to buy, sell, or trade. It'll be tied to religion. It'll be tied to the worship of a man of sin. The Bible calls him the Antichrist, the beast. Now, people may say, it seems far-fetched to go from the banning or the war on cash to the mark of the beast. But think about this. It is really just another domino in a series of dominoes that will be needed to implement what Revelation 13 is talking about. Total control, total permission, needing a permission in order to participate in daily economy. By the way, this was done in the Roman Empire. By the time the emperors came and they were deified as God, you would literally had to pay homage to the emperor, burn incense, and then you were allowed to enter into the marketplace if you honored him as God. And you can worship any god you wanted as long as you acknowledge the emperor as God. Now, with the elimination and the restriction of cash, and people are more and more dependent on technology, and governments seems keen on getting rid of cash and putting in these restrictions through technology, it seems more and more possible that somebody in the future will demand to be worshiped and can implement through technology the kind of system we read in Revelation 13, the beast system. It will be the merger of government, businesses, of course, the economy. Obviously, that's where businesses take place, the marketplace. And in this case, Revelation 13 speaks of a false religious system because remember, it is about worship, the worship of this man, the Antichrist. And by the way, this false religious system is currently being built, implemented on the earth through ecumenism. And the Bible speaks the only way out of the beast system is total faith in Jesus Christ, who will come and destroy the Antichrist and his kingdom and his mark and his image. Jesus has already triumphed through the cross and the resurrection, and he will ultimately be crowned King of Kings and Lord of Lords at his coming. And we have to overcome the world. What overcomes the world, the Bible says, is our faith. In Revelation chapter 3, Jesus promises his faithful people, his faithful believers, that he will keep them out of the hour of temptation. Peresmos is the word that he uses in Greek. And that is coming upon the whole world, this hour of temptation, which I think this is what the Bible is referring to, the mark of the beast. In Revelation 15, it says those who trust in Jesus overcame the beast, his image, and the number of his name, 666. In 1 John chapter 2, it tells us don't love the world, it's a system, the world system. Don't love the world system or the things in the world system, because all that is in the world is the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the boastful pride of life. This is not from the Father, but from the world system. And the world system is going to pass away. But if you do the will of God, you will abide forever. And then he says, and you've heard, this is verse 18, you've heard that Antichrist is coming. It ties the lust of the world and the lust for things and material things and the pride of life to the coming of the Antichrist, because that's what is going to be offered when that man of sin appears. And will only be possible to overcome this by total trust in Jesus Christ and the willingness to resist the temptation of the world and its lust for material things, and even be willing to lay down your life. Remember, if you don't take the mark, it is punishable by death. But if you do take the mark, the Bible says whoever takes the mark will be condemned forever in hell, because it is the worship of the Antichrist. It is the worship of Satan. Now, how far are we from this? I don't know. It seems close. It seems like the events that are happening are leading us to that. Is the war on cash part of this world system that will ultimately lead to Revelation 13? Well, I think not just in isolation, but I think in all the events combined with technology, with censorship, with digital IDs, and what the government is trying to implement and big businesses are trying to implement, I think that's where it's headed. Let us know what you think in the comments. Until next time, may the Lord keep you, may the Lord strengthen you, may he give you hope, the hope of his coming. You can find more videos like this, current event, prophecy updates, verse-by-verse teachings by different pastors and teachers at Devore Truth. And this is, of course, Devore Truth YouTube channel, ccodtruth.org, or you can find us at Moriel TV and Moriel.tv and Moriel.org. Until next time, keep preaching Jesus. He's coming soon. God bless.